Okay, so today I'm going to be talking about Orlando and Jade War. This will probably be a pretty quick review because Orlando is a very short book and Jade War I read a month ago. So let's just chat. They'll both be spoiler free. Use the timestamps if you want to skip around. Orlando by Virginia Woolf. This is my first Virginia Woolf book, and the basic spoiler free, very basic setup is Orlando is a man who we spend a bit of time with establishing his life, and then one day he wakes up as a woman, and then we spend the rest of the novel with Orlando following the rest of her life. So it's a really unique book. I originally said that I wanted to read love letters first because that is it's a collection of letters between Virginia and her girlfriend Vita, and I'm pretty sure Orlando, the character, is largely based on Vita and her experiences through life. And I find that really fascinating, so I wanted the extra information. But I had so much trouble getting my hands on a copy of Love Letters. I didn't end up reading it first, and I don't know when I will. But I did read Orlando. But Orlando was a really interesting experience to read. I think Virginia tried to do a lot of different things with this book. The two things that really stood out to me that she was discussing throughout this story were gender and writing. And it was really interesting to see her perspective on these things. She also made some very interesting choices for how she decided to tell the story. And I don't know, I don't understand a lot of them. Like, for instance, Orlando lived, I think, 300 years throughout this entire book, but we're never actually told that 300 years have passed. We just kind of have to pick up cues of what's happening in the world as Orlando is living life. And we're left to kind of say, wait a second, some major changes have happened, but Virginia never actually gives us the cue of how much time is passing throughout it, or why Orlando is living 300 years. Other random things, like Orlando at one point fell asleep for 7 days, and we never get a reason why. We're told that this happened or what effect it has on the story. It's just like this random thing that she threw in there. So there were a lot of really interesting choices that Virginia made that I stumbled over, I guess, because I was like, but why? But why? What's the purpose of this in this story? Or something would happen, and I'm like, wait a second, how much time has passed here? It was a really interesting reading experience, and I don't think I've read anything like Orlando before. It was interesting to see kind of some of the things that Virginia was discussing, and it was really interesting to discuss them with other people as I was reading this with a group of people over on my Discord. And in general, I've never read a book like this, but it was a really fascinating book to read, especially since I didn't even know a lot of these conversations were even happening in the 1920s. Next, some also very brief thoughts on Jade War. Like I said, I read this about a month ago. I was actually buddy reading this with Q and TG and Michael, and the reason I was putting off this review for so long was because we were originally going to all discuss it together in a video, and that didn't end up working out, so I think we're all just making separate videos now. But we all had really similar experiences with this book. Actually, Michael's still not done reading it. He is working hard to push himself to the end, but struggling. But I will link Q and TG's wrap up where they did their spoiler-free thoughts, and then I'll link Michael's channel, and he'll get the review out when he gets it out. But this was an interesting reading experience for me because this book was so hyped. I don't know what your experience with this book has been, but my experience has been that the people that I personally know that read this book loved it so hard and hyped it so hard. And the general idea, the general thing that was said to me was, this book is going, like, if you liked Jade City, get ready, because Jade War is gonna blow your socks off. And honestly, I like Jade City better. I liked Jade War, but I didn't love it. I thought it was fine, but I didn't think it was great. So Jade War, okay, actually, let me talk about my perspective. Let me talk about my expectations a little bit. Jade City was a extremely long, slow build, and then it all it all came to a head and just had an explosive second half of the book. I think second half, at least an explosive ending. And the end of Jade City left me very, very excited for Jade War. The characters were really interesting to me to follow because we're not following good guys. We're following different levels of bad guys who are also fighting bad guys. It's just like a very dark world full of dark characters. And I found that very interesting. I thought that the Jade magic was really cool, even though it wasn't a huge focus of the story. And I thought that the fight scenes were really well done, and I enjoyed reading them a lot. And in my mind, I thought that we had all this buildup. We had half of a book at least of so much build-up and so much establishing of characters, establishing of politics, establishing of what these different clans feel about each other and how their dynamics work. And then we had this great end to Jade City, and I was like, okay, Jade War, let's go. Full throttle, we're going to move, and it's gonna be awesome. But that is not what Jade War was. So what it was more very, very slow moving political stuff. In fact, the politics were amped up even more in Jade War. So if you really enjoyed the politics of Jade City, if you found all the political maneuverings and all the different ways that the clans interact and how they treat different situations, if you found that fascinating in Jade City, get ready, because Jade War really focuses on it, and it is definitely there a lot. I think that Jade War had incredible moments. It would just like nothing would happen. I mean, that's not true. It was very political and very like talking and relational, and a lot of slow things were happening. But it was a very slow and then big incredible moment, and then very slow and then big incredible moment, and then very slow, and that was very consistent throughout the second book. And all of those big moments, I loved. I ate them up. They were so good. But then all the other parts, it didn't work for me. I mean, it's all well written. I just didn't care that much. I think that the family dynamics in this group of people that we follow is fascinating, and I think that the people themselves are fascinating, and see them all move. They all had movement. And seeing them all move, whether they were digressing or moving forward, was fascinating to me, and I really, really enjoyed all of those things. I also like that the world, we got to see a lot more of the world in this. There were different places that we got to actually spend some time in, so it wasn't such a narrow focus, which I thought was really interesting, because then we got to see how these political things and how this group of people that we follow and the decisions they make, how it affect other areas as well. There was a lot of great that happened in this book, and I get why people love it, but I liked it, but I was bored for a lot of it. A lot of my excitement about book one was in what I could see book two could be. Like, I was excited for the potential of book two, and of course the hype as well. And, you know, I don't know. I think that this is going to be a series that I'm going to come away. I'm still going to read book three. I'm going to read it with QNTG and Michael if he wants to. He still hasn't finished book two. I don't know if he will read book three, but QNTG are. And I'm going to read it with them, and it's going to be great to talk to them. But I think that this is definitely a series that I'm going to come away from saying, yeah, it's good. But it's not going to make my favorite series list. It's one, I guess I feel similar to this as what I feel with Robin Hobb, where it's like the character work is excellent, and her ability to make very complex political situations is great, but the movement of the story is so incredibly slow, and there's so many moments where I feel like I read this for, 30 minutes, an hour, and I don't think anything happened. It's not my taste. But I still will continue on with the third book because I'm very fascinated by these characters. I'm very interested in their family dynamics, and I'd like to see where they all end up after this trilogy is over. I want to be clear that I seem to be very largely in the minority. I mean, all all of us, QTG and Michael, we all kind of had similar feelings, but we seem to be in the minority here. This seems to be a really, really, really hyped and loved book, so take everything I say with a grain of salt, but this is how I felt while reading it. So there you go, there is a quick review of 2 books that I read. I would love to continue chatting with you about it in the comments. What did you think of these books? If you've read them, do you plan to read them? I post videos every Tuesday through Friday. I'll see you again soon.